The bridge of the Remnant smelled of recycled oxygen and hot circuitry. Captain Tessa Moore gripped the command rail and felt the faint vibration of the ship's cooling systems through the metal. Emergency lights painted the deck in long amber rectangles. The main screen showed a small vessel drifting against the black. Its hull was honeycombed with black pores, thousands of them. The shape was wrong, asymmetrical, like a bone that had grown in the dark. It did not match any registry from the sector chart. Tessa kept her voice low. Passive sensors only. Finn, confirm emissions status. Engineer Finn Roscoe crouched at the sensor console, one hand pressed flat against the panel, the other tapping a rhythm against his thigh. Emissions dark, Captain. We're a hole in space. They shouldn't see us. They're not hailing. Diplomat Zara Lindholm leaned toward the comms station, her fingers woven together on the console. I've been cycling through the Bloomsong's universal code for 3 minutes. Nothing, not even a carrier wave. Tessa studied the scout ship. It had not changed course. It drifted closer on a direct intercept vector, slow and patient, like something that had all the time in the void. Try again, she said. Visual spectrum, audio, anything. Zara adjusted the frequency band. Her voice came out steady and clear. This is the human survey vessel Remnant to unidentified craft. We mean no harm. Respond on any frequency. Silence answered. The scout ship opened a seam along its belly. Tessa saw it split, a dark, wet line that widened into a gap. 3 small objects dropped from the opening and accelerated toward the Remnant. They were not shaped like missiles. They were blunt and heavy, trailing no exhaust. Finn, she said. He was already working the sensors, fingers moving fast. No drive signature, no warhead. They're not weapons. He paused. They're boarding pods designed to latch on and cut through. The words landed like a weight in Tessa's chest. Evasive maneuvers, helm port thrusters full burn. The Remnant groaned, the deck tilted as the ship slid sideways. Tessa braced herself against the rail and watched the pods adjust their trajectory. They did not miss. They did not even slow. The first one hit the forward section. The sound was a grinding shriek that traveled through the hull and into Tessa's bones. The deck shuddered. Alarms started bleeding from the damage control station. Battle stations, Tessa said. All hands to defense positions. She heard boots pounding on the lower decks. The security team was moving. She looked at the main screen and saw the other 2 pods impact against the midsection, one after the other, like hammers on a bell. Finn's voice cut through the noise. 3 breaches, Section 7, 11, and 14. They're inside. Tessa left the command rail. She pulled a pulse rifle from the wall locker and checked the charge. The weapon was cold in her hands. She had not held one in 50 years. The corridor outside the bridge was narrow and poorly lit. Emergency strips glowed along the floor. She moved toward Section 7 and heard the sounds before she saw them. Clicks, hisses, something heavy scraping against metal. She rounded the corner and saw 3 shapes moving in the dim light. They were insectoid, chitinous bodies the color of dried blood. 6 limbs each, the front 2 ending in razor edges that caught the emergency glow. Their heads swiveled in unison, clusters of multifaceted eyes reflecting the dark. The security team opened fire. Pulse rounds sparked off the chitin. One of the creatures took 3 hits to the thorax and did not stop. It lunged forward and swept its blade arm across the nearest human's chest plate. The armor split. The man went down. Tessa raised her rifle and fired a burst at the creature's face. The rounds cracked against the chitin. One of the eyes burst, spraying fluid. The creature reared back, hissing, but it did not fall. Finn, she shouted into her comm, give me something. The broadcast suppressor, he said. I can trigger it, but it'll jam our comms too. Everything goes dark for 90 seconds. Do it. A hum built through the deck plates. The lights flickered. Tessa saw a shimmering haze form beyond the viewport, a distortion in the air that spread outward. The field hit the creatures mid-step. They froze. The coordination collapsed. The 3 Gorvath soldiers staggered, limbs moving in different directions, heads turning without focus. One of them stumbled into the wall and stayed there, clicking in confusion. Go, Tessa ordered. The security team advanced. Without the hivemind guiding them, the drones were slow, disoriented. The humans brought them down in seconds, pulse rounds finding the gaps between chitin plates. The bodies hit the deck with wet thuds. The smell of burnt chitin filled the corridor, acrid, unfamiliar. Tessa lowered her rifle. She looked at the dead creatures and felt nothing close to victory. She turned and walked back to the bridge. Zara was at the comms station, her face pale in the emergency light. Finn was hunched over the sensor console, both hands on the panel, his tapping gone still. "Report," Tessa said. Zara did not look up. "The scout ship is transmitting, wideband, I decoded it." She paused. "It's a distress signal, a call for reinforcements." Tessa felt the cold settle deeper. "Can we intercept it?" Finn shook his head. "The signal is already past the local relay point. There's no way to catch it." "How long before the swarm arrives?" "If they're in the nebula," he pointed at a dark smear on the edge of the sensor display. 48 hours, maybe less." Tessa looked at the scout ship still drifting on the main screen. It had done its work. It had delivered the message. She thought about negotiation, about diplomacy, about the galactic code the Bloomsong had given them in good faith. The Gorvath did not understand any of it. They understood submission or destruction, nothing in between. "Arm the stellar capacitor," she said. Finn blinked. "Captain, that's a last resort weapon. A single shot leaves us dead in the water." "They've already sent the signal. If we don't destroy that scout ship now, it will follow us. It will report our course and speed. We'll have a swarm on our tail before we reach the jump point." He stared at her for 3 seconds. Then he turned and began working the controls. The capacitor whined as it charged. The deck vibrated harder. Tessa watched the scout ship drift, blind to what was coming, patient and empty. The whine peaked. Finn's hand hovered over the trigger. "Fire," she said. A beam of concentrated light lanced from the Remnant's forward array. It hit the scout ship dead center. The hull glowed orange, then white, then it ruptured in a blossom of fire that expanded and faded into the dark. Debris scattered across the sensor field. Tessa exhaled. She did not let herself relax. Finn scanned for any remaining transmissions. He did. His face went still. "Captain, there's a faint signal already past the nebula boundary, launched before we fired. It's the same distress code." The message had already been sent. Tessa stood at the command rail and stared at the empty space where the scout ship had been. The bridge was silent except for the cooling systems and the distant groan of the damaged hull. The swarm was coming, and the Remnant was alone. The observation lounge of the Petalfall smelled like a forest after rain, warm and damp, thick with the scent of living moss. Soft bioluminescent fronds pulsed along the walls, casting a slow green glow across the gathered beings. Pollenway stood at the center of the room. Her blossoms drooped slightly at the tips, a sign of stress that her kind could not hide. She rustled gently as she spoke, her voice like wind through reeds. "The Gorvath swarm has declared this sector a hunting ground." Her blossoms trembled. "The Bloomsong have tried to negotiate for 40 cycles. They do not negotiate. They consume." Zara Lindholm leaned forward on the low table carved from living wood. Her voice stayed level, but her eyes were sharp. "Why does the Galactic Council not intervene?" Pollenway's stalk bent slightly, a gesture of sadness. "The Council is fractured. The Ethon remain indifferent. The Abyssal do not acknowledge the conflict at all. The Synthos provide data but no action. The Gorvath are considered a local threat, unworthy of a full assembly." Observer Zur shifted against the wall. His gray skin flickered through a sequence of pale tones. He spoke for the first time. "The Riven have watched the Gorvath for 600 years. His voice was smooth, almost musical. "They do not negotiate. They do not respond to treaties. They only respond to one language." Captain Tessa Moore stood rigidly near the door. Her scar caught the green light as she turned her head. "What language?" Zur smiled, a thin, cold expression that did not reach his eyes. "Violence, delivered decisively." He said nothing more. Tessa stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to Logician One. The Synthos representative floated 6 inches off the ground. Its polished metallic cylinder reflected the glow of the fronds. A holographic face projected above the cylinder, expressionless. Logician One spoke in exact sentences. "The Gorvath hive mind relies on 2 synchronized communication channels. The first is short-range pheromonal exchange, which the broadcast suppressor disrupts effectively. The second is quantum-entangled signal transmission across all drones within a system. The quantum link remains intact regardless of local jamming." Zara's hands folded together on the table. "So the suppressant only buys us time. It does not break their coordination entirely." "Correct," said Logician One. "The drones become locally disoriented, but the hive retains global awareness." They will adapt. Pollenway felt a shudder run through her central stalk. She had seen what the Gorvath did to worlds that resisted. Fields of shattered plant structures, the silence of extinguished ecosystems. She could not let that happen here. She spoke before she could stop herself. We need a joint defense. The room went quiet, even the fronds seemed to dim. Zara looked at her. You are offering military alliance. Pollenway's blossoms curled inward. No, the Bloomsong are pacifists. We have no weapons. We do not build them. We do not wield them. We cannot fight. Tessa's voice cut through the pause. I am not asking for weapons. Pollenway turned to face her. The human captain stood with a stillness that felt ancient. There was no fear in her posture, no hesitation, just a weight that hung in the air like held breath. Tessa continued, we need staging space, a base near the nebula where the swarm nests. Your asteroid outpost in the fourth ring, it has atmosphere, it has power, it has a docking bay. Pollenway's blossoms fluttered. That outpost is a research station. It holds archived genetic samples from 14 species. It is not fortified. I know Tessa's voice did not rise. I am not asking for a fortress. I am asking for a place to stand. We do the rest. The warm air pressed against Pollenway's leaves. She could feel the moisture coating every surface. She looked at Zara, who met her gaze with calm eyes. She looked at Zur, who watched with a faint smile. She looked at Logician One, whose holographic face revealed nothing. She thought of the old tales, the ones the Bloomsong elders whispered when they thought no one was listening. Tales of humanity before the near extinction. Tales of a species that had burned its own homeworld fighting something worse. Tales of survivors who did not know how to stop. She had thought those tales were warnings. Now she was not sure. Pollenway rustled, then stilled. I agree, on one condition. Name it, said Tessa. Your gene forge, you will not use it on any Bloomsong, not on my people, not on our genetic archives, not on any living thing that shares our root. Tessa nodded once, done. Zara exhaled slowly. Observer Zur tilted his head. Logician One recorded the exchange in silence. Pollenway watched the human captain. She saw the way Tessa's hands hung loose at her sides, ready but not tense. She saw the way her eyes moved across the room, cataloging exits and threats and opportunities. She saw the way her jaw set when she spoke. These humans were not broken. They were waiting. And that waiting was dangerous. Pollenway's blossoms opened slightly, a gesture of acceptance. The outpost will be ready for you within the cycle. I will transmit the approach coordinates. Tessa stepped forward. Thank you. Do not thank me, said Pollenway. I do this because I cannot stand idle while the Gorvath consume another system. But I do not want your gratitude. I want your promise that when this is over, you will leave our worlds untouched. Tessa met her gaze. You have it. Zur pushed off from the wall. His expression remained unreadable. The Riven will watch. We will record. We will not assist. No one expected you to, said Zara. Zur's smile returned. Good. He walked toward the door, his footsteps silent on the moss-covered floor. Logician One floated after him. I will compile the tactical assessment and transmit it to your ship. The room emptied. Pollenway stood alone, the green fronds pulsing around her. She rustled, her blossoms trembling. Then Tessa's earpiece crackled. She touched it. Go for more. Finn's voice came through, tight and quick. Captain, we have a problem. The swarm accelerated. They changed course 11 minutes ago. At current speed, they will reach the asteroid outpost in 12 hours. Tessa's hand dropped from her ear. She turned to face Zara. Zara's voice was quiet. That is half the time we estimated. Tessa's jaw tightened, then we moved faster. She walked out without another word. Pollenway stood alone in the green light. 12 hours. The warm air pressed against her leaves. And the waiting began. The Gene Forge chamber hummed. Finn Roscoe traced the control panel with his fingers, feeling the low vibration through the plastic. The crystalline needles inside the chamber glowed with a steady blue light. They looked beautiful. They looked like they wanted to be used. Captain Tessa Moore stood with her arms crossed. Her scar caught the light when she turned her head. She watched the 3 volunteers standing in the chamber. They wore thin medical gowns. Their hands were at their sides. Zara Lindholm stayed near the door. Her face was pale. Her fingers worked the braided cord around her wrist, twisting it tight and then loosening it. Finn spoke without looking up from the panel. His voice was careful. We have not tested the long-term effects in over a decade, not on humans, not at this setting. Tessa did not move. The long term does not matter if we are dead, Finn. There are other options. Name them. He opened his mouth, closed it. There were no other options, not against the numbers Pollenway had shown them, not with a swarm that did not negotiate. Zara stepped forward. Her voice stayed level but thin. We are talking about rewriting their DNA. We are talking about changing who they are. Tessa turned to face her. The motion was slow and deliberate. I am talking about keeping them alive. If they are changed but alive, that is a victory. If they are unchanged but dead, we have lost. Zara looked at the volunteers. The three of them stood still. They had volunteered. They had signed the forms. They had watched the training videos. They knew what the Gene Forge did. One of them was a woman named Lena. She was 32. She had 2 children on a station 3 sectors away. She had looked Finn in the eye when she volunteered and said, I want to go home when this is over. I want to be alive to do it. Finn pressed the activation sequence. The chamber door sealed with a soft hiss. The needles descended from the ceiling. They moved slowly at first, then faster. They touched the volunteer's skin. They pierced it. The screaming started. It came through the alloy door, muffled, thick. The sound of bones breaking and reforming. The sound of cells tearing themselves apart and rebuilding. Lena's voice rose above the others. It did not stop. Finn counted the seconds. 180 seconds total. He counted each one. Zara turned her back to the chamber. Her shoulders were rigid. Her hands were pressed against her ears. Tessa did not look away. She watched the chamber. Her face was stone. The screaming stopped after 3 minutes. The door opened. The volunteers stepped out. They moved with a new stillness. Their eyes were slightly duller. The brightness was gone. The sharp edges of their personalities had been smoothed away. Lena looked at her hands. She turned them over. She opened and closed her fingers. Then she whispered, barely audible, I feel nothing. Finn ran the cognitive test. It took 4 minutes. The results appeared on his screen. 30% reduction in emotional reactivity. The fear response was blunted. The anger response was blunted. The joy response was blunted. The volunteers would follow orders. They would not hesitate. They would not panic. He read the numbers aloud. His voice was flat. Tessa nodded. It is a cost we can bear. Zara's voice cracked. We are losing our humanity. Tessa looked at her. Her eyes were hard. Humanity is still alive. That is what matters. Lena walked past them. She did not look at anyone. Finn noticed she did not blink once during the entire conversation. Not once. The other 2 volunteers followed her. They walked in a straight line. They did not speak. Finn stared at the screen. The numbers stared back. 30%. He thought about what that meant. He thought about Lena's children. He thought about whether she would recognize them when she got home. He thought about whether they would recognize her. He recorded his own baseline, heart rate, blood pressure, neural response times, emotional reactivity score. He saved the file. Then he stepped into the Gene Forge chamber. Zara saw him move. She shouted, Finn, no. He did not stop. Tessa grabbed his arm. Her grip was strong. What are you doing? He met her eyes. I cannot ask them to do what I will not. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she let go. The door sealed. The needles descended. Finn closed his eyes. The pain was not what he expected. It was not sharp. It was deep. It came from inside his bones. It felt like his skeleton was trying to push through his skin. His teeth ground together. His hands clenched into fists. He did not scream. He counted the seconds. 180. He wanted to scream. He wanted to beg them to stop, but something in his chest kept his mouth shut. Some stubborn piece of him refused to break. The change felt like a quieting. The fear that had lived in his chest since the war, the constant low hum of anxiety, the worry that kept him awake at night, all of it faded. It did not disappear. It just became smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. The door opened. He stepped out. The medical bay looked the same. The lights were the same. The people were the same, but he saw them differently. They were slower, softer. He could see their weaknesses now. He could see exactly how to exploit them if he needed to. He looked at Tessa. His voice came out flatter than before. It works. She saw the loss in his eyes. He saw her see it. She said nothing. Zara stared at him. Her mouth was open. Her eyes were wet. She shook her head slowly. Finn walked to the control panel. He began deleting the log file. He did not want anyone else to see the cognitive test results. He did not want anyone else to know what the number meant. The alarm sounded. It was a low, pulsing tone. The kind of tone that meant something bad was already happening. The kind of tone that did not give you time to prepare. Finn looked at the display. His hands moved across the panel without thinking. They were faster than before, more precise. The sensor grid showed the whole picture. Thousands of ships, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They filled the screen like a cloud of insects. They moved in perfect formation. They did not waver. The swarm was 10 times larger than anyone had predicted. Finn stared at the display. He felt his heart rate increase. He felt the familiar spike of fear, but it was muted now, distant, like watching a storm through a thick glass window. He was ready. Tessa's voice came from behind him. How many? He did not turn around. More than we can count. She did not ask if he was afraid. She already knew the answer. The command center smelled like a fire that had barely been beaten back. Zara Lindholm coughed and tasted burnt insulation mixed with something sharp and chemical. Alien pheromones, she guessed. They clung to everything now. She pressed her wrist against her mouth and tried to keep the comm link stable. The screen flickered. Static bled through the audio channel. Somewhere in the outpost, an alarm cycled on and off in a broken rhythm. Tessa Moore stood at the tactical display with her sleeve dark and wet. Blood, not hers, Zara hoped. The captain's eyes moved across the map of the outpost without blinking. 12 humans dead, 2 hours since the first wave landed. Finn Roscoe sat in a chair near the wall. His hands lay flat on his thighs. His eyes stared at nothing. He had not moved in 10 minutes. Zara watched his chest rise and fall and wondered what he was feeling, if he was feeling anything at all. The gene forge had taken his fear. She did not know what it had left behind. Pollenway stood near the ventilation duct, her blossoms singed and brown at the edges. She moved slowly, deliberately, like a creature conserving energy for something worse to come. Zara cleared her throat. The sound was dry. She tried again. The captured Gorvath drone sat in a reinforced cage bolted to the floor. Its chitinous body gleamed under the emergency lights. 6 limbs, razor edges, eyes that did not blink. It had not spoken since they dragged it in. It only clicked. Zara knelt in front of the cage. The drone shifted. Its mandibles opened and closed with a wet sound. She said, "I am Zara Lindholm of the human vessel Remnant. I am asking for a ceasefire." The drone clicked 3 times. Then it lunged against the bars. A blade arm shot through a gap, slicing the air where her face had been a second before she jerked backward. She hit the floor. Her braided cord snapped against her wrist, frayed and smoking from the heat of the corridor she had crawled through an hour ago. Tessa did not look up from the display. They do not negotiate. Zara stood and brushed ash from her sleeve. I had to try. Pollenway's blossoms trembled. She said the Gorvath are adapting. Their drones now broadcast a low-frequency pulse. It interferes with your broadcast suppressor. The field collapses after 12 seconds instead of 90. Tessa turned. She looked at the tactical display, then at Finn. Finn did not move. Tessa said, "Engineer, report." He spoke without lifting his gaze. The enhanced fighters are performing, 3-to-1 kill ratio, but they are detached. One volunteer refused to retreat from a burning corridor, had to be dragged out. He paused. Tessa waited. Finn said he did not understand why the corridor mattered if the enemy was dead. Zara felt something cold settle in her chest. She touched the braided cord. It was warm against her fingers. Tessa said, "Pull them back to the inner bunker. We consolidate." Pollenway's blossoms dipped. The main reactor is on the outer ring. If the Gorvath breach it, the explosion will destroy the asteroid. There will be no bunker to retreat to. Tessa stared at the display. The silence stretched. A new channel opened. Zara saw the signal identifier flash on her screen. Observer Zur. The Riven envoy's face appeared, pale gray skin shifting like clouds. He was smiling. He said, "I have a tactical solution." Tessa's jaw tightened. She said, "Let me hear it." Zur's smile did not waver. "A small probe. A charged stellar capacitor. You have the energy storage. We have the guidance system. The probe flies into the heart of their nesting zone. The capacitor releases. The swarm burns." Tessa said, "What is the price?" Zur paused. He said, "The Gene Forge plans, after the battle. The Riven wish to study them." Zara stood up. Her voice came out sharp. "No, the Gene Forge is forbidden technology. The Galactic Council banned it for a reason. Trading it to the Riven makes us no better than the swarm." Tessa looked at her. She said, "We are out of options." Zara said, "There has to be another way." Tessa said, there is not. Zara looked at Pollenway. The Bloomsong envoy said nothing. Her blossoms hung limp. Zara looked at Finn. He had not moved. She looked back at Tessa. The captain's eyes were the same shade of exhaustion she had seen in the mirror that morning. The same weight. The same knowledge that there were no clean choices left. Tessa said, I accept the deal. Zer nodded. The probe is en route. It will arrive in 90 seconds. Finn will need to program the course. Finn stood. He walked to a terminal. His hands moved across the keys with a precision that did not belong to him anymore. The machine responded. He did not blink. Zara said, Tessa. Tessa did not answer. Zara said, you are trading our future for this fight. Tessa said, I am trading a secret for a chance to live. If we die here, the secret dies with us. That helps no one. Zara's hand closed around the braided cord. The fabric was rough against her palm. She said, you do not know what the Riven will do with it. Tessa said, I know what the Gorvath will do with us if we do not stop them. The terminal beeped. Finn said, course is set. The probe will reach the nesting zone in 30 seconds. Capacitor detonation on impact. Zer's image flickered. He said the Riven await the transfer after the battle. Good hunting. The channel closed. Zara stood at the edge of the room. She watched the tactical display. A small icon appeared. The probe, moving toward a cluster of red markers that represented the Gorvath nest. 20 seconds. The captured drone clicked. It pressed against the bars of its cage. Its eyes reflected the light of the display. 15 seconds. Finn said, I have a glitch. Tessa turned, what? Finn said the probe's guidance system is drifting. The readings are wrong. 10 seconds. He tapped the terminal. The line on the display curved. The probe icon shifted off course. 5 seconds. Finn said it is not going to the nest. It is coming back. Zara's breath caught. The probe icon stopped. Finn said the capacitor will detonate in 6 minutes, directly above the outpost. The alarm stopped cycling. It became a single steady tone. Tessa stared at the display. Her hand went to her sidearm. She said, how do we stop it? Finn did not answer. The timer appeared on the screen. 5 minutes, 54 seconds. Zara looked at the captured drone. It clicked once, then it was still. The bunker trembled. The concrete walls vibrated with a low, constant hum that came from somewhere deep in the outpost's bones. Tessa Moore pressed her palm flat against the hatch control panel. The indicator light glowed red. Sealed. The outer corridor was gone, breached and flooded with vacuum and the distant whisper of approaching doom. 4 minutes. She turned from the panel and looked at the people packed into the room. 18 faces stared back. Some were bloody, some were blank. All of them waited for her to do something. Zara Lindholm stood at the comm station, pressing the transmit button over and over. Nothing came back. The dead air hissed through the speaker. She slammed her fist against the console, and the sound was hollow and useless. Tessa walked past her. She stopped next to Finn Roscoe. He was slumped against the wall, his legs stretched out in front of him. His face was empty. The Gene Forge had done its work. He looked up when she stopped, but he did not speak first. Tessa said, we need an option. Finn blinked slowly. His voice came out flat and quiet. The broadcast suppressor. It's a jammer, Tessa said, not a shield. It can be overloaded. He did not look at her when he said it. He looked at the ceiling. The energy field expands before it fails. If I force the feedback loop, the emission wave will harden for about 6 seconds. It will absorb blast energy, like a temporary wall. How big? 5 meters radius. Tessa did the math. She looked at the room. She looked at the 18 people waiting for rescue that was not coming. She said 12 will fit. Finn nodded. She did not hesitate. She did not have time to hesitate. The wounded go inside, the able-bodied stay out. Zara heard her. She turned from the dead comm and her voice cracked. That's a death sentence for 6 of us. Tessa did not look at her. It's the only sentence I have. Pollenway uncurled from the corner. The Bloomsong envoy stood slowly, her green fibers rustling. The blossoms on her crown were closed tight, pale and fragile in the red glow. She spoke and her voice sounded like dry leaves scraping stone. I will stay outside. Tessa shook her head. No, you're our ally. I am not human. Pollenway stepped forward. Her blossoms trembled. My species can regenerate from fragments. If enough of my biomass survives, the colony can rebuild me. I am the best candidate for the outer position." Tessa stared at her. The wall hummed. The lights flickered and died. The red glow from the capacitor warning indicator painted everything the color of old blood. 3 minutes. "You're sure?" Tessa said. Pollenway's blossoms opened a fraction. "I am certain." Tessa nodded. She did not say thank you. There was no time for gratitude. She turned to the crew. "Wounded to the center of the room. Move." They moved. The wounded were carried, dragged, and helped to the open space near the emergency hatch. Tessa counted them. 12. 6 stayed on the edges. Finn stood and walked to the suppressor control panel. Pollenway stood beside him. Finn's hands moved over the panel. He did not speak. The suppressor began to hum in a different pitch, rising, climbing into something that hurt Tessa's teeth. Pollenway looked at Tessa. "I am glad I met you." Tessa opened her mouth to answer, but the light came first. The suppressor overloaded with a sound like a bell being struck. White light flooded the bunker. Tessa threw her arm over her eyes. The heat hit her face like a solid thing. The dome formed. She saw it through her fingers, a shimmer of energy, translucent and blinding, curving over the wounded. The dome was 5 meters wide. It covered the 12. It left the 6 exposed. Tessa was one of the 6. She grabbed a support beam. The capacitor detonated. The shock wave hit like a physical hand. The bunker's walls melted. Concrete turned to liquid and ran down the surfaces like water. The heat was absolute. Tessa felt her skin blister. She held the beam and she did not let go. The dome held. It held for 6 seconds. The blast rebounded. The energy dissipated. The white light faded. And then it was quiet. Tessa opened her eyes. The bunker was a ruin. The walls were slag. The ceiling was gone. Above her, the sky was dark and full of drifting smoke. The stars were hidden. She looked down. The dome was gone. The suppressor panel was a molten puddle. The wounded were alive. 12 bodies lay in the center of the room, some moving, some still, all breathing. She counted again, 12. She looked for the 6. They were gone, vaporized. The blast had taken them. And Pollenway was gone too. Tessa walked to where the Bloomsong envoy had stood. The floor was covered in ash. Small fragments of pale fiber lay scattered like dried petals. The smell was sweet and acrid at the same time. Burned blossoms. Tessa knelt. She picked up a fragment. It crumbled in her fingers. Finn was standing at the edge of the ruined room. His face was unchanged. The Gene Forge had taken his emotions, but it had not taken his voice. Tessa stood. She walked to him. She held up the fragment of ash and she asked, "Did you know the suppressor could do that?" Finn did not blink. "I designed it to fail." "You never told anyone." "No." She stared at him. The silence stretched. She understood then. He had kept the secret because he knew she would use it. He had built a failsafe that only worked once, and he had hidden it until the moment when the cost would be too high to question. She looked at the wounded. She looked at the ash. She looked at the sky where the stars should have been. The victory was hollow. The cost was written on the walls. A light flickered in the smoke. A small drone descended. It was riven-made, silver and sleek. It hovered in front of Tessa and projected a hologram. Observer Zur's face appeared. His gray skin shifted. His elongated fingers touched together. He smiled his thin smile. "The Gorvath swarm is broken," he said. "The blast drove them back. Your outpost is destroyed. Your ship is gone. The terms of our agreement remain." Tessa said nothing. "The Gene Forge plans," Zur said. "You have one standard rotation to deliver them." The hologram vanished. Tessa stood alone in the ruin. The wounded coughed behind her. Finn stared at nothing. Zara sat against a wall, her face streaked with tears she did not wipe away. Tessa had no ship, no outpost, no way to refuse. She looked at the ash in her hand. She had one. The air in the riven observation vessel tasted like cold metal and static. Observer Zur stood before a holographic display that flickered with the gray remains of the outpost. Ash, melted alloy, nothing that moved. He turned as the airlock cycled open. 3 humans stepped through. Their pressure suits were patched and scorched. Captain Tessa Moore moved first, her eyes scanning the obsidian walls with the same vigilance she had shown on the battlefield. Diplomat Zara Lindholm followed, her face pale and her jaw tight. Engineer Finn Roscoe came last. His movements were precise. His expression was empty. Logician One floated beside Zur, its polished cylinder body reflecting the holographic light. The Synthos unit projected a neutral face. No greeting. No acknowledgement of the ash the humans still carried on their boots. Zur bowed a slight inclination, enough to show respect without yielding ground. "You have kept your side of the bargain," he said. His voice was smooth, measured, the voice of a being who had never known urgency. Finn stepped forward. He held out a data cube. The surface was dark and seamless. He did not look at it as he handed it over. He might have been passing a tool, nothing more. Zur took the cube. He turned it over in his elongated fingers. The Gene-Forge plans complete. Tessa spoke. Her voice was rough from smoke and shouting, "What will the Riven do with it?" Zur smiled. His teeth were small and even, pale against gray gums. "We will study it." He did not say for what purpose. Logician One interrupted. The holographic face flickered. "The transfer of forbidden Gene-Forge technology violates the Galactic Accord. The Synthos will report this violation." Zur did not turn. His smile did not waver. "The Synthos have no enforcement power," he said. "The observation continues." Zara stepped forward. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs to still them. "Destroy the cube," she said. "The Gene-Forge cost us our humanity. It should not be spread." Zur looked at her. He studied her as one might study an insect pinned beneath glass. "The deal is final," he said. "The Riven do not renegotiate." He paused, his smile widened. "We have revised our assessment of humanity. You are no longer a wounded animal." Tessa's voice was flat. "What are we now?" Zur tilted his head. "A predator waiting to be unleashed. That is both a compliment and a threat." The silence stretched. Zara's breath was audible. Tessa did not move. Finn stood still as stone. Then Finn spoke. His voice was flat. No tremor, no emotion. "The Gene-Forge will not work for the Riven. You lack the specific epigenetic markers. I sabotaged the plans." Zur's smile vanished. He examined the cube. His fingers traced its surface. The light caught the edges. He looked at Finn. His eyes were cold, curious. "It is incomplete," he said. "The cube is incomplete." Tessa stepped between them. Her body blocked Finn from Zur's view. "The deal is still valid," she said. "The Riven got what they asked for. The sabotage is not part of the agreement." Zur stared at her. His gray skin seemed to shift. The light from the hologram painted shadows across his face. Then he laughed. It was a low sound, dry, hollow. It echoed off the obsidian walls. He laughed and shook his head. He said he would take the cube anyway. The Riven would remember this deception. He turned to the holographic display. The image of the burned outpost flickered. He did not look at the humans again. Logician One spoke. Its voice was flat, neutral. "The Synthos will monitor the situation. The data cube will be logged as evidence of human deception." Tessa grabbed Finn's arm. She pulled him toward the airlock. Zara followed. Her steps were heavy. Her shoulders were tight. The airlock cycled closed behind them. The hiss of seals, the groan of metal. Zur stood alone. He watched the humans retreat through the external feeds. Their figures crossed the blackened ground. They moved toward the wreckage of their ship. He pressed a hand to his chest. A private channel opened. He sent a signal to the Riven Council. His words were precise, calm. "The humans are not broken. They are dangerous. Recommend asset classification revised to threat level Omega." He cut the signal. He picked up the data cube. He turned it over. Incomplete. Sabotaged. The engineer had been clever enough to know he would be caught, clever enough to calculate the cost. Zur smiled again. The humans were interesting, more interesting than he had expected. He placed the cube in a containment field. He would study it anyway. Even a lie held truth if you knew where to look. Outside, the human delegation reached the burned outpost. Tessa stopped at the threshold. She looked back at the Riven vessel. It hung in the void, sleek, silent, watching. She said nothing. Zara spoke. Her voice was cracked. He knew. He knew the cube was sabotaged the moment he touched it. Tessa did not look at her. He said they would remember the deception, not the sabotage. The deception, he respects the attempt. Zara stared at her. That is worse. Finn walked past them both. He did not speak. His face did not change. He stepped into the wreckage and began sorting salvage. The sky was dark. The stars were cold. Somewhere in the distance, the Gorvath swarm was regrouping. The broadcast suppressor was damaged. The capacitor was inert. The Gene-Forge was a lie on a cube in a Riven containment field. Tessa looked at the cluster of survivors. 12 wounded, 4 able-bodied, a burned ship, a dead outpost. She looked at Finn, at Zara, at the ash that clung to everything. She looked at the riven vessel one last time. It did not move. It did not signal. She wondered what the other species in the galaxy had seen, what they had recorded, what they had judged. She stepped into the wreckage. The ship's reactor hummed at partial power. The hull groaned where it was not supposed to. The air smelled of ozone and burned plastic. They had survived. She did not know what that meant anymore. The shuttle's landing gear groaned as it touched down on the tarmac. The sound vibrated through the hull, up through the frame, and into Finn Roscoe's bones. He felt it as a series of pressure waves, nothing more. 3 weeks in transit. 3 weeks of staring at the Earth growing from a pinprick to a sphere to a world. 3 weeks of sleeping 2 hours per cycle because his body no longer demanded more. The Gene Forge had done its work. Tessa Moore sat beside him in the co-pilot seat. Her eyes were closed, but she was not asleep. He could tell from the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers drummed once against her thigh every 30 seconds. She had not relaxed since the capacitor detonation. He did not expect her to. Zara Lindholm sat in the rear compartment. She had not spoken in 6 hours. She stared at the viewport as the shuttle descended through cloud layers. The green of the continent emerged, forests, farmland, the patchwork of recovery. Finn brought the shuttle down on the designated pad. The engines whined and cut. Silence filled the cabin, real silence. No hum of alien alloys, no click of chitin, just the settling of metal and the distant sound of wind across the field. Tessa opened her eyes. She did not look at him. "You need the reversal therapy," she said. Her voice was flat, tired. "It takes years," Finn said. "Full emotional reintegration is 18 months minimum at a restricted clinic. Partial restoration takes longer. We don't have that kind of time." "You are not yourself." "I am more efficient." He said it without heat. It was a statement of fact. "That is what the mission required." Zara's voice came from behind them, quiet, controlled. "The mission required soldiers, Finn, not machines." He turned his head. She met his gaze. Her eyes were red at the edges. She had been crying at some point during the descent. He had not noticed. "We completed the objective," he said. "The outpost is secure. The Gorvath's nesting zone was destroyed. The Bloomsong have a foothold to rebuild. We traded the Gene Forge plans, but I sabotaged them. Zur knows, but he cannot use them without our markers. The Riven will reclassify us as a threat. That is a problem for the diplomats, not for us." Zara's lips pressed together. "That is a problem for everyone." "We survived," Finn said. "That is the only thing that matters." Zara looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "That is what a machine would say." The words hung in the cabin. Finn heard them. They registered as data, a statement from a distressed colleague. He did not feel the sting. He observed it the way he observed the pressure readings on the navigation panel. Neutral, informational. He did not respond. Tessa stood. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Her fingers were warm. He felt the pressure, but not the comfort. "Come on," she said. "Let's go home." The hatch opened with a hiss. Earth air flooded the cabin, green and damp, rich with the smell of soil and growing things. The first breath hit his lungs and something flickered in his chest, a ghost of a sensation that vanished before he could name it. He stepped onto the tarmac. The spaceport was dusty, a single runway bordered by chain-link fence. Beyond the fence, a crowd of people, families, friends, the ones who stayed behind. Finn's feet carried him forward. He walked beside Tessa. Behind him, Zara's footsteps were slower, heavier. Tessa stopped. A girl ran toward her, maybe 12 years old, dark hair, Tessa's eyes. She crashed into Tessa's chest and wrapped her arms around her neck. Tessa held her, her shoulders shook. The girl was crying. Finn could see the tears on the girl's cheek, wet against Tessa's collar. Tessa closed her eyes. She pressed her daughter's head against her shoulder. She did not speak. She did not need to. Finn watched. He understood what he was seeing. A mother reunited with her child, the relief, the grief, the love. He cataloged the emotion. He recognized it intellectually. He did not feel it. He kept walking. The fence gate opened. His sister stood on the other side, a leaner, 2 years younger. She had his same restless hands, his same sharp jaw. She was smiling, but her eyes were wet. She stepped forward and pulled him into an embrace. Her arms wrapped around his ribs, her face pressed into his chest. He could feel her heartbeat. He could smell her shampoo, something floral, familiar. He stood still. His arms hung at his sides. He wanted to lift them. He wanted to hold her. He wanted to feel the warmth of his sister and let himself be human for one moment. His eyes stayed dry. The warmth of her arms did not reach his chest. The sound of her crying did not reach his heart. He stood there in the sunlight on the green earth, surrounded by the living, and he felt nothing. Alina pulled back. She looked at his face. Her expression shifted from joy to concern to something like fear. "Finn," she said. "I'm tired," he said. "It was a long trip." She nodded. She did not believe him. He could see it in her eyes. She was his sister. She had known him her whole life. She knew a lie when she heard one. She took his hand and led him toward the parking lot. Later that night, Finn sat alone in his apartment. The walls were bare. He had not lived here in months. The furniture was unfamiliar. The silence was different from the shuttle's silence. It was heavy. It pressed against him from all sides. He sat at a small desk. A single lamp cast a circle of yellow light on the surface. The rest of the room was dark. He opened a sealed file on his personal tablet. It was marked with his name and a date, 3 months before the mission, before the Gene Forge. He had recorded it as a backup, a message to himself, a precaution. He pressed play. His own voice filled the room, heavier, warmer, full of things he could no longer name. "Hey Finn, it's you. I'm recording this because I know what the Forge does. I've read the studies. It changes you. It quiets the parts of you that feel, and I'm scared." A pause, a breath. "I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared of losing myself, of waking up one day and not recognizing the man in the mirror. So here's the deal. If I change too much, if I come back hollow, tell me who I was. Tell me I was human. Tell me I laughed. Tell me I cried. Tell me I stayed up all night worrying about the people I loved. Tell me I was scared and stupid and alive. Don't let me forget." The recording ended. Finn stared at the empty screen. The silence returned. He tried to remember what it felt like to be that man, the one who recorded that message, the one who felt fear and joy and love, the one who cried. He could not. The memory was there. He knew it existed. He could recall the facts. He had recorded this message. He had been afraid. He had loved his sister. He had wanted to stay whole. But the feeling behind those facts was gone, erased, replaced by a clean, quiet emptiness. He sat in the dark. The yellow light pooled on the desk. He did not cry. He wanted to. He remembered wanting to. But his body did not obey. He closed the file. He set the tablet down. He looked at his hands. They were the same hands that had adjusted the Gene Forge, the same hands that had programmed the capacitor probe, the same hands that had survived. He pressed them flat against the desk. The wood was cool. He waited. For something. For a tear, for a tremor, for a sign that the man he used to be still existed somewhere inside this hollow chest. Nothing came. He sat alone in the silence. On the earth he had crossed the galaxy to protect, surrounded by the people who loved him, and he could not find the door back to himself. Finn Roscoe pressed play again. His own voice said, "Tell me I was human." He listened.